Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Myth and Meaning, the series in which myself and Brock go through literature and other fiction to derive the meaning and mythological significance of that piece. Today, we are still going over Dragon Ball in episode 5, Walking with God. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
And I think to get started today, I'm going to ask you about the significance of the picture you've chosen for this intro.
I was thinking about the situation that Bulma's in because up until we meet Yamcha in the series, a lot of what's happening here is not about Goku, right? Goku seems to be sort of a representation of a state of being and not much of a character, but Bulma's character is really significant to what's happening up until that point. And Bulma in this episode does not agree with Goku on how he treats, you could say, the voice of God, the conscience, or whatever you want to say about Turtle. And so there's a sort of wrestling with God nature with that. And when I think about wrestling with God, this is the image that comes to mind. The sort of resistance of the angels, or fighting back against the wisdom of the angels, or the thought process that is taking things lightly.
It seems very futile as well. It seems like the struggle against that is kind of pathetic. And would you say Bulma's attempt to remain self-centered is pathetic as well?
I would say it's the epitome of pathetic.
Well, let's get into it then. So first things first, I did want to talk briefly about how it is that Goku finds himself in the midst of Turtle.
Yeah, I'm very curious about this. I don't know why we have these images. Actually, we've talked a bit about these ideas, and a little bit of it we just kind of throw some ideas out and get ready to talk about it.
This actually goes back to the homies and how he interacted with the homies and encountered Malice, encountered the dragon, right? He has found that there is something worth defending, which we can see in the St. George story, because he gets the hand of the woman in that case. But he's encountered Malice, right? He's figured out the vulnerability of women in one episode, and now it's the next path is to hoist the suffering and struggles of the world on your shoulders. And that is the way, which this is Lao Tzu, who wrote the holy book of the Taoists.
Mm-hmm. All right, I see where you're going with this, because I do have some notes here about the way of Tao.
You might, because it's this episode is actually very along those lines. But I wanted to show the evolution with these pictures because it started off with peel off, and then this you can think of the St. George picture you can think of as more or less what happens with the panties and the vulnerability of women and the need to defend them.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, thinking about the panties in more of a societal context, also framing it that way helps contextualize the significance of what's going to be happening over the next few episodes with Bulma's character and another character as well.
Very true. So were you satisfied with the explanation here?
I see where you're going.
Yeah. And so then we have the manifestation of the divine in ordinary or hideous figure. Goku's caught off guard here, and the reason I put these pictures on is because this is from Beauty and the Beast, a mythological story about the judgment of the divine by its outer appearance. And Turtle is not an attractive creature. He's not fast. He's not strong. Goku would have no reason to respect him.
Right. He doesn't have a utility, an outward utility for Goku.
And that's important to say that Goku still respects what he is. And it is also worthy of mentioning that the voice in the dub is also the voice of Kami, who is God.
Coincidence?
It's not a coincidence.
It's definitely not a coincidence that the voice of God is also the voice of the turtle.
It's true. Did you want to say anything here?
Not that much, not on this frame. Just that it's interesting to me that we're getting into it this quickly. That we waste almost no time. A lot of people talk about Dragon Ball being full of filler, and we talk about this and Get the Mic a bit. I wanted to throw this out in this series that if you're of the mindset that Dragon Ball is a lot of filler, I mean, we're getting into these concepts rapid fire.
This is like scene after scene. We're not even going by episodes here. We're just going by like moments that are significant. Like the first night is significant.
And whenever we did Get the Mic originally, we wanted to skip the first season of Dragon Ball.
So stupid.
And, just because there is a mythological significance to Dragon Ball up through the Frieza saga to talk about in more depth than this. So the fact that we're really trying to compress these ideas down for you, man, there's a lot to this.
We're
not take it
leaving
lightly.
out a lot, it's true. But we have no time to do so. But let's talk about this and how it is the divine path that Goku is taking versus the hedonistic path that Bulma is proclaiming. Look at her hands. She's focused on herself. She's upset that Goku would deign, that he would deign help this turtle.
Yeah, there's a bit of a meta story going on here because this is really, at this point, this is the story about Bulma. I know Goku's the protagonist, but this is a story about Bulma. Bulma is on a path to get her wish. She meets Goku, and Goku comes along with her on her path for her wish. Now, on the way, they meet Turtle, right? And Turtle says, I'm lost. I need to get back to the ocean, which I think it's partially significant that sea turtles don't get lost. They can find their way back to the ocean easily. So this is a test, and it's laid out as a test just in the concept of what happens here, right? And Bulma's reaction to that test is she, sort of as a logical or more egocentric being, says, no, okay, you don't have any utility to me. Like, that's not going to help me get a boyfriend.
Well, think about this too. It's meaningless to help this creature.
Well, it's meaningless in the short term. It's meaningless if you cannot conceptualize
think about it as
the
a
reality
now,
of what
right?
you want, right?
Yeah, if you don't pet a cat when you encounter it on the street, you're missing that opportunity to interact with the divine.
Right. Whereas Goku, whenever he meets Turtle, he says, okay,
I'll take you up on the offer. Right,
I'll help
exactly.
you.
I'll bear the burden, which is why I put that picture there.
right. The voluntary acceptance of a suffering that you have not earned. I think that's really the significance of that, because we'll get into the Christ imagery someday, but as far as the carrying of the cross, it's sort of bearing the burden of something that you have inherited, that you have not earned.
And you can say that Goku has quasi-inherited this when you realize where Turtle has come from. It's actually very important.
Right. And the voice of Turtle stands as the voice of the conscience in this sort of conceptual situation, right? Whereas the hedonistic way of looking at it is, how does this serve my ego in the short term? Which that's obviously what egotistical Bulma is thinking about.
Of course. But here we go with Piaget.
Piaget, my boy.
I'll let you take it away with Piaget.
They meet a beast man on the road who makes an offer to Goku. He says, I'll give you passage if you'll give me that turtle, right? Now, this is where the symbology is probably a bit obvious to people, because the idea of carrying the voice of God and a beast man standing in your way and telling you, if you give me that, I will let you progress on your path, that speaks for itself. Now, Bulma's reaction to this is to say, you should give it to him, right? Because we've got somewhere to be, and that place to be is me having my dream. But Goku sees through that, and he understands the inherent evil in treating the situation that way. So he obviously disagrees. Now he gets into a fight with the Beast Man and defeats him with his rock, paper, scissors technique. So the reason that Piaget is on the screen right now is because of the concept of play. And this is a pretty heady topic. We're going to plow right through it. It gets way deeper in our other podcast, but I want to try to get this in here because this is extremely important whenever we get back to Yamcha.
It is very important because it shows that Yamcha, well, we'll get there. But right, so in this instance, it is the bestial nature of man that is defeated by play.
Right.
The fairness that comes out of play. And I don't know if you mentioned the rats.
Oh, I haven't gotten there yet. But I
So-
do have a note that says Piaget, Panksepp, Peterson, and play.
Oh, I don't know. I actually don't know. I only remember the reference here about the rats who they did some tests, and the rats that were 10% bigger than another rat, right? They would play with the other rat and they would let them win. They would let the smaller rat win, even though they could win every time. A rat that's 10% bigger can win 90% of the time, something like that.
Right. There's a nature of reciprocal play. See, Piaget is our boy on the right here. He studied the development of children, and he came to understand the necessity of socialization through reciprocal play. It sort of stands as the basis of our morality, right? The understanding that if you can be reciprocal in the nature of your play with another being, then it will allow you to socialize. And our socialization came from and also is built upon the unconscious moral structure that we have as beings. And Panksepp comes along, and he wrote a book called Affective Neuroscience, where he found the dedicated circuit in mammals for play, where it reinforces how we interact with people and how we view ourselves. And so you can look at the development of children and the way that Piaget looked at them and trace that back as a mirror to our development as a species and how we developed our consciousness and our ability to socialize and build the societies that we have now.
Right, our ability to interact with each other and our refusal to return to barbarism, which is the exact choice that Goku can make here.
Right, you can make the choice that you just take what's yours, right? I'm stronger than you, I take what's mine. It's great. You become the lone wolf. You become
But
the
then
bandit.
you can no longer interact in the same way that our characters are about to be able to interact with a societal figure worthy of adoration.
Right, and if you give up the conscience that you carry with you for the sake of just getting what you think you deserve by way of being at the top of your dominance hierarchy, let's say, you do not get to transcend to the next level. And the way of being that Goku represents transcends that. And so we're introducing that idea early here to say, okay, part of that is accepting the conscience and not giving it up, keeping that and holding on to that because you know that it is important. And so he uses his little rock, paper, scissors technique, and it literally kills this bandit. He punches him and it just kills him on the spot. He's completely obliterated by the concept of play.
He cannot fathom the fair and reciprocal nature.
Right, he cannot fathom that there's a bigger game than the game currently in front of him, you could say.
Right. And speaking of games, we have play here. And we have the ultimate realization, the victory in the game of games there with Harry Potter.
So Harry Potter is really significant to this right here because what he's reaching for there, the golden snitch in alchemy, is referred to as the round chaos. And you might say, well, that sounds like a couple of words you've used before. Well, we'll get to that when we talk about the Dragon Balls, because they are the round chaos. But the important thing to note about the golden snitch is that it is the game of games, right? So you think about Quidditch, and it's like you win Quidditch if you just catch the snitch, practically. Not every time, but most of the time, if you can catch the snitch, you just win the game. That sounds pretty stupid, and I always took that to be kind of a dumb aspect of it. And
It's like the game is not really a sport.
yeah, it's like, okay,
It's
as
not
far
like
as the sport
sports
goes,
ball.
I had a GameCube game where I played Quidditch, and it was not a very good game. It's not a good game, but as an idea, it's actually really interesting because think of it this way. The seeker wins by being able to focus on a game within a game while playing that primary game. So the game within the game is the ethic across all games that ensures the inclusion into the most games possible while simultaneously being able to win enough to make it worth playing in the first place, right? So the game that you play when you're playing another game is the game where you say, is this game worth winning or losing for the sake of being able to play more games? Do I socialize or do I win? Right? Do I secede this win for the sake of more wins in the future? That's the concept of play, right? The real concept of play that elevated us to the ability
And that's exactly
to
what
socialize and
what
to be
those
moral.
dogs are doing.
Right.
That's why dogs are probably the fastest growing species in intelligence wise. I mean, apes are still going on their same path. They were already pretty smart. Dogs, in just a few generations, have gone from wolves who can't recognize patterns to... There are some dogs now that are purported to speak, but using, like, touchpads.
Oh, yeah. Well, dogs emote in the ways that humans do, right? We have socialized them so quickly, right? Just by domesticating them the way that we have. I think they're a great case study as to what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. Let's continue here. Oh, that's it?
Well, that's the main idea of this episode, right? It's that
Is play, yeah.
is that Goku introduces the idea of play, and he sees it through. He takes Turtle to the ocean for the sake of doing so because he knows it's the right thing to do, and it's not until the next episode that we see what the result is of that.
But we do know that at this moment, by using play and following those instincts, Goku is able to once again walk with God outside of paradise.
Right. Walk with God because the voice of Turtle is literally the voice of God. As far as we can conceptualize God as the thing that springs up from the unconscious, right? It is the voice inside of you that is bigger than you, but also comes from you. It's such a complicated idea.
It's very, very... It's very...
It is very...
Hope you enjoyed episode 5 of Myth and Meaning. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm Brock.
And we hope to see you next time. Please subscribe and smash that like button if you liked what you heard. We'll see you next time.